Welcome to the finale pitch event of the 2021 University of California Startup Innovation Challenge, held in partnership with the Extreme Tech Challenge. I'm Victoria Slivkoff, Global Head of Innovation and Entrepreneurship for the UC system. And it's a pleasure to join you at GCV for 4 years in a row to feature this showcase. Launched by UC headquarters, this annual UC Startup Innovation Challenge was founded to highlight the rich innovation and startup ecosystem across UC. We're excited to partner with Extreme Tech Challenge again this year to support entrepreneurs addressing global challenges. As the largest global startup competition that supports and accelerates tech for good companies, our partner XTC provides a unique opportunity for UC entrepreneurs to join a global community of change makers, corporate partners, and investors who can help them scale their world-changing startups. This year, we received hundreds of applications from UC faculty, students, postdocs, staff, and alumni from across all UC campuses and 3 national labs, representing a broad range of technology sectors, from biotech, ag and food, clean tech, to social impact startups, all with the potential and vision to reshape our world. Today, we're going to hear from 10 finalists across 2 tracks, early stage and growth stage. Each finalist will present for 5 minutes, followed by 5 minutes of Q&A with the judging panel. One winner will be selected from each track to win a $50,000 grand prize, and the company will automatically advance to the final round of XTC, which will hold its global finals this summer. And now, introducing our judging panel, it's my pleasure to welcome Atul Butte, Chief Data Scientist at UC Health, Christopher Chu, Vice President and Managing Director at Samsung Catalyst Fund, and Chris Haskell, Vice President, Head Open Innovation of North America West at Bayer. And thank all of you in the audience for joining. Let's get started with the early stage track presentations. First up, let's welcome Alma Zanadarova from Fixing CO2.
So, hi, thank you for having us here. My name is Alma. I'm a founder at Fixing CO2, where we convert CO2 into clean fuels and chemicals. Climate change is one of the most challenging problems of our time. It is also very urgent. We need to cut global CO2 emissions by half by the year of 2030. In order to stop irreversible consequences of the global warming. Development of renewable electricity will hopefully make our energy sources cleaner, but we would still greatly depend on the products that are made from oil. Most of these products we use on a daily basis. At our company, we're working on solutions to reinvent this economy and create ways to manufacture these products in a cleaner manner. To solve climate crisis, we would need new technologies and even new industries. Carbon tech is emerging as a new industry that on one hand provides a path to a greener future, and on the other hand, this is a $1 trillion market opportunity with a lot of growth potential. Our company is working on a solution to complement any industrial emitter, make their processes cleaner, and help to recycle CO2 to useful products. So our company is focused on carbon utilization through the electrochemical CO2 reduction. We first electrochemically convert CO2 to CO. Second, we combine that CO with clean hydrogen. And third, using already established Fischer-Tropsch process, we can produce any fuels and chemicals that are currently being produced by the oil and gas industry. This will allow us to produce carbon neutral fuels and chemicals by recycling CO2 back to valuable products and close the carbon cycle. In fact, every process on this cycle is industrially mature except of the CO2 conversion to CO, and this is where our technology comes in. Our technology was developed at UC San Diego and was funded by JPL NASA as an effort to build a reactor on Mars for the next human mission. Our technology is unique, patented, uses renewable electricity, scalable, and will have a competitive price. Once we scale our technology, it will look like this: an electrolyzer that can be modularly deployed, cheap and clean, that will allow companies not only get their CO or other products derived from CO, but also offset their CO2 emissions. There are various applications to this technology, including utilization of CO as a chemical commodity. But another interesting application is decarbonization of the steel industry. that is responsible for 5% of global CO2 emissions. A lot of big mining companies already pledged to cut their emissions, and a lot of steel industries already have CO2 CO stream in their pipeline. So we can actually, I'm sorry. A lot of steel manufacturing already have their metal refining processes, and some of them already have infrastructure for CO2 CO mixture. They just need to utilize it in a smart, cleaner manner. So this is our go-to market strategy. We first commercialize on the CO market, which is a $3 billion market. And then we would need to partner with hydrogen producers and Fischer-Tropsch manufacturing to get to the fuels and chemicals market. So our company incorporated in 2019. We went through multiple incubators. Last year, we won net zero emission competition at BP Ventures. And right now we are working on the lab scale prototype. We are planning to raise around $2 million to build on-site prototype and perform field tests. In the future, we're gonna raise $8 million to build a modular reactor, and we're gonna need more investment to get to the large scale production. So this is our team. My name is Alma. I received my PhD from UC San Diego. I previously also worked at Stanford and Caltech as a researcher. Elder graduated from Caltech, and he previously founded a company that was successfully acquired by another bigger company. And Anya, also a recent Caltech graduate, she is helping us with the engineering development. We also have a great advisory board and management team with the world experts in CO2 reduction. And with that, I'd like to thank you, and I'm ready to take any questions.
Thank you, Alma. I'm going to turn it over to the judges. Questions?
I'll start first. Alma, thank you so much for your thoughtful presentation. I'm also a Caltech graduate, so it's always great to see another techer in an entrepreneurial business. Yeah, I do have a question. So how do you see your business model evolving? I know it's a lot of it is you're going to be building a electrolyzer, which is a hardware product. It's a device. But to get to the next level in terms of growth, how do you see this going? Are you eventually going to think about services as well on top of that?
So we actually, one plan is to sell our electrolyzers, and another plan is to lease them. So we actually made financial projections, and we think that when we scale this technology, we would be able to be profitable by the year of 2024 with the profit margin of 50%.
Is there a consumable element to your technology that you might be able to, sell something else beyond just your the electrolyzer itself?
Well, I think once we will be profitable and once we establish our manufacturing, we can also think about just selling CO. And then once we actually partner with another companies, we will be able to get to the fuels and chemicals market and sell the fuels and chemicals after that.
Okay, thank you.
So Joel, maybe I can go next. Right. Is the base kind of unit one reactor? Is that that's the widget here in the end, right? Is one reactor? What would the output be of one reactor? And is the idea to position those at CO2 producers?
So we calculated that we would be able to produce 1 megawatt reactor that will produce approximately 5 tons of CO per day. So it's going to be a modular reactor that will produce this amount of CO, but we can scale it up so it's scalable as well.
Thanks, and I'll this is way outside my scope of expertise, but I'm curious if the economics of the end user here, is this really about environmental impact, and would it rely at all on sort of carbon trading situations, or is this really about improving the efficiency of their actual product? So again, it gets down to the value for the end user.
So we hope actually for the future regulations like carbon taxes and carbon regulations that should decrease the price basically of our reactor, and it actually should help us to get to the competitive market and be competitive in comparison with just traditional fuels and chemicals.
So you're probably happy about the recent election results.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, we hope for Biden administration to get on climate change. And
I guess that then relates to whether you think the US is a primary market, or you think there's other markets where that part of it might let you get more access.
Yeah, actually, we talked with a lot of people. We did some customer discovery, and it's much easier to do this business in Europe right now, where there are a lot of regulations. But Japan is also the country where they recently implemented a lot of regulations on CO2 emissions. And so Japan is another country that we are looking for. But in the US, we hope for future regulations and carbon tax.
Thanks very much.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alma, for your presentation. Next up, I'd like to welcome Yao Ofosu Anson Jr., representing KovaDx.
So thank you for the opportunity. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Anson. I'm one of the co-founders of KovaDx, and our mission is to transform the diagnosis and treatment of sickle cell disease through AI, thereby making it more accessible. And so in case you're wondering what sickle cell disease is, it's a genetic mutation which affects the red blood cell. So the red blood cell plays a key role in delivering oxygen to the cells in the body to be able to generate energy. And on the left is the normal red blood cell. It's supposed to have this nice biconcave shape. While on the right, you have sickle cell, where the cells are sickle shaped. And this is basically due to a point mutation in the hemoglobin. And so the end result is that these people end up with the cells breaking up. They have strokes, they have severe pain, known as the sickle cell crisis. And so that was kind of the inspiration for the formation of our company. And so the idea for the company actually started during my clinical practice. I was a young doctor on duty, and this boy came in. The boy, he was very young, he was very, very sick, his eyes were yellow. And the clinical team, we kind of knew what was wrong with him. But unfortunately, we really couldn't help him. Well, why couldn't we help him? Because his family couldn't afford the test that we wanted to do, because we had to draw blood, take it to a lab, get someone who is skilled to be able to do the test. On top of that, we didn't have adequate tools to be able to monitor him, whilst he was on admission. And so that was kind of the inspiration for the formation of our company. It's a huge problem. Up to 200 million people, including myself, actually carry the sickle cell gene, and 30 million people actually are affected around the world. Did you know that every single year, 170,000 children die before the age of 5 because there is no actually access to testing for sickle cell disease? In the US, people with sickle cell actually live longer, but they still tend to live 33 years shorter than the average American. And they spend up to 14 days each year in the hospital and shell out a whopping $1 million throughout their lifetime trying to treat the disease. Who does it predominantly affect? It predominantly affects the Black community. So my friends and I came together, we are like, we've got to solve this problem. And I think we are the right team to do it. So myself, I'm an MD MS, currently doing my PhD here at Berkeley. Song, our COO, just finished her MBA from Yale, and she has a JD and has spent a good part of her career serving marginalized communities. So she's very passionate about what we are doing. And then Tim, our CTO, actually just got his MS from Yale, and he's also doing his PhD in computer science and AI over there, which is very relevant to what we are doing, because our solution is an affordable and accurate AI-based diagnostic and also monitoring tool. How it works is very simple. You take a drop of blood, place it inside a microfluidic cartridge, which simplifies the sample prep. The cartridge is then inserted into what we call the quantitative phase imaging microscope, which generates a hologram of the cells. So for each drop, we are looking at millions and millions of cells. And so we generate this for all these cells, pass it through our deep learning model for classification, for diagnosis and monitoring. And so the end result is that for a test which takes up to 2 days, you are getting your results in less than a minute. And then we are also reducing the cost by more than 96%. But more importantly, our test will actually be the only one that enables also monitoring, which is very essential because essentially we are looking at the membrane changes, and this will help in clinical decision making. For example, when to admit or discharge the patient, whether to transfuse, an objective way to assess pain. These are ways that our monitoring tool can help. In terms of the market, the sickle cell disease testing market is valued at $250 million, but it's projected to grow to $13.7 billion. Now, if you look at the fact that companies like ourselves are, trying to solve this problem, but also people are living longer, it's very, very clear that this market is going to keep growing. But more importantly, the figure you actually see on your left is just for the sickle cell testing. If you consider the fact that we are going to do monitoring, which require continuous testing, and then also the fact that our solution is actually a platform technology. And so we actually run models, for example, for malaria, where we had like 99% accuracy. So the potential, the business use case potential for what we are doing is very, very huge. And it's a huge opportunity to also make impact. So far, we built our prototype, the hardware, we trained some AI models, and then we are currently doing data collection with our research partners, 2 very large universities. The plan is that with that data, we are going to build our deep learning models and then fundraise and then go through the regulatory process and eventually launch our product. So it's a huge problem. We are very passionate about it. And thank you for the opportunity to share this with you.
Thank you, Yao, for your thoughtful presentation. I'm going to turn it over to the judges.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I'll go first. So what's the business model here then? So the idea would be to sell and deploy those microscopes, or how, or the cartridges, or can we start with that?
Exactly. So the point is that we are not actually looking forward to making a lot of money from the microscope. We actually don't even mind giving away the microscope. The recurring revenue is actually going to come from the chip. Just like the printer companies, for example, sell the printers for as cheap as possible, and then you buy the cartridge or the color. But we are targeting hospitals and research institutions and pharma companies in the US. And there's also a potential business use case for our cloud AI platform. But in developing countries, we hope that governments and NGOs can work with us to increase access.
But are you expecting those microscopes to be everywhere? You're touting the speed of your test, but if the samples still have to move to, let's say, a bigger city, that's going to add delay time.
No, so our device will be a point of care device, so, and it's like the size of a toaster. And so we want it to be in all these low resource clinical facilities.
Okay. I'll wait for my other judges to ask the question. I'll ask maybe another couple. So it seems like a sophisticated device to generate a hologram, to do digital imaging that feeds into deep learning. The cost of goods for that is going to be low enough that you can just give it away?
It's going to be low. Actually, we chose this particular microscope because it was developed by this professor at Duke, and he developed it in a way that it's very, very robust and can be used in the low resource settings. And the cost of making it, it's like $500 to be able to do it. So it's not that expensive.
That was more than I was thinking. Final question. The standard care is hemoglobin electrophoresis, which is also quantitative, right? We look at the fetal levels, adult levels of hemoglobin. And I think, if I remember my hematology, we can follow those, right, with certain drugs to see how those are changing. How would you follow a patient with this? Just looking at the sickle percent?
So you mean how to monitor with can you repeat the question?
Yeah, how would you follow a patient or monitor a patient with this measurement that you're proposing?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the device is able to measure the membrane changes, So for example, with the data we have, it's been shown that people, when they're in a crisis, the membranes are stiffer versus when they are not. And so you can basically correlate that with, for example, clinical efficacy. And you can measure the membrane changes and correlate it, for example, with the level of pain to be able to extrapolate, to be able to follow up.
So maybe I'll follow up on that, if I may. I'm curious how you feel this will change standard of care. I mean, clearly the burden on society is, the diagnosis can only impact standard of care, which will impact burden on society. So just curious on that.
I
I mean, if you're able to track, I mean, I understand for diagnosing someone, you can then initiate care, but for tracking it, I mean, can you predict a pain crisis, or how frequently do you have to test in order to do that? I mean, there's.
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, it requires us to record a lot of data, and currently, at least when I practice in Africa, for the sickle cell patients, depending on the frequency of crisis, they visited the hospital regularly. So some of them will come like once a year, others will come 3 times a year, others will come less frequently. And most of the time before each visit, they have to come with at least a CBC or a malaria test, So we are thinking this will be one of the evaluation parameters, to be able to evaluate.
But then once you have that information, I'm trying to understand how that differential diagnosis modifies your treatment approach.
Yeah, so for example, it will be able to help you assess pain, for example, or it will be able to help you decide whether to admit the patient or not.
Okay.
Or, with the percentage sickling, for example, it can help you decide whether you want to do exchange transfusion to transfuse the patient or not.
Okay.
So we are initially thinking of starting with Ghana, because one of the greatest challenges we anticipate is regulation, obviously. The regulatory framework in some of these developing countries are actually relatively easier compared to the US. So we think it's actually, and also because I grew up there, I have connections and understand the system. We think it will give us early access, which will enable us be able to generate cash flow and then eventually give us enough money to come to the US. But we definitely will want to be in the US.
Are you thinking about different price discrimination for charging more for Ghana? Charging less for Ghana as opposed to the US, because you have very different market dynamics there.
Exactly. So that the money you make from the US, for example, can subsidize some of the developing countries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Yao, for your presentation. Next up, I'd like to invite Kevin Kong from Takachar. Kevin?
Great, good afternoon. I'm Kevin and I represent Takachar. Our mission is to turn trash into cash. So the premise of our work is that more than 4 billion tons per year of crop and forest residues, which you call biomass, is often being burned in the open. And a lot of that is not only a wasted opportunity, it also is a hazard in some cases for wildfire, as in the West Coast, and can also create significant air pollutions. And one of the bottlenecks for utilizing sort of biomass residues for higher value products is that it's often very loose, wet, and bulky, which makes it very difficult and expensive to transport and collect to a centralized location where you can actually do that conversion. So what Takachar is working on are small-scale, low-cost portable systems that can be latched onto the back of tractors and even pickup trucks to deploy to remote, hard-to-access regions and farms and logging landings to locally convert this raw biomass into higher value bioproducts on site. And the idea is that if you do that, then on every truckload, you can load up to 3 to 10 times the value of the raw biomass, and thereby you can eliminate a lot of that logistical and transportation cost. And our unit also requires no external heat or chemicals to run itself. This was developed during my PhD work, and you can see we have done lab prototype as well as pre-commercial prototype. And what we've shown is that our unit can be deployed at 100 times less both capital cost and scale compared to the current alternatives, and also is able to engineer bespoke bioproducts from a wide range of input materials that other technologies are not able to achieve. So what kind of biomaterials are we talking about? So there are different types of materials that we can craft the biomass residues into. This ranges from activated carbon to fertilizers and higher grade materials, as well as biofuels. For our beachhead, we're primarily focusing on the specific application of activated carbon, which is the removal of per and polyfluoroalkyl substance, something which is known as PFAS, from municipal drinking water. We chose this because it's a fast growing market, but I mean, it's nascent enough that nobody yet has a sort of, there are no entrenched players with a strong foothold in it. So to understand PFAS removal a bit better, let's meet Megan. So she is a water manager at Orange County Water District. And in the past 2 years, unfortunately, she discovered PFAS in her water wells. And right now, the federal and the state local authorities are still sort of writing regulations of how that should be removed. And as a result of that, she has to use a lot of activated carbon for that, to the point that her water, sort of the activated carbon spending at her water plant ballooned from 3% to now almost a third of the budget. And she anticipates spending almost $1 billion over the next 30 years on this removal process. For us, we can supply our activated chemicals to her at half the cost. So why is it that we can do it so cheap? So it turns out that our product is actually subsidized by the landowners, people like Matthew, who work with large-scale landowners like Pacific Gas and Electric companies, Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E. And essentially his task is to remove the vegetation from along the electrical infrastructure to avoid another disastrous campfire. And for them, the biggest issue there is finding truckers willing to haul away this loose, wet, this bulky biomass, and also finding a good market to utilize it. And for that, I mean, for us, we can provide him with a market outlet for that, and PG&E is able to pay us, willing to pay us even for a pilot. The bigger vision, though, is not just matchmaking between Matthew and Megan, but really, I mean, we have a control system that's robust enough such that we can take different types of input materials, and knowing its characteristics and the end market demand in a certain community, we can tune a reactor remotely in real time in the field to deploy and convert it in a way that optimizes this whole matchmaking process. And for that, our business model charges a per ton usage fee based on the amount of materials we process. And in the long term, our vision is not only to reduce the barriers for wildfire mitigation and air pollution, and also the reliable generation of power for the large landowners and electric utilities in California, but also provide cleaner drinking water, as well as creating rural livelihood and carbon mitigation worldwide. So with that, I thank you and hope that you share our vision of turning trash into cash.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Very interesting technology. Over to you, judges.
So I'll go first. So per ton usage fee, are you going to sell the trailers or lease them? What's the initial business model there?
Yeah, so initially, I mean, obviously to do the first pilot, we are going to own and operate our own with our partner PG&E, right? And sort of the idea is that we operate it and we sell the end products to the activated carbon consumers. But as we scale, what's going to happen is that so, I mean, these vegetation management teams, they are actually already accustomed to hauling around various pieces of equipment from place to place. I mean, sort of the chippers and so forth. And for us, we are building this as an inline, something that can integrate inline into their equipment that they can just buy and operate. And the idea is that they purchase the equipment, and when they run it, under different biomass conditions, under different moisture contents and so forth, our control system allows them to process those variable biomass into quality control end products.
Okay, so it runs without power, without chemicals, you said, and runs in the middle of nowhere where the grass is being cut, and 3 patents. So there's enough of a moat in those 3 patents to prevent others?
Yes, so for the patents, the initial patent we are exclusively licensing Alcorn University, and the 2 others we filed ourselves. But I think more than just the patents, the idea of this idea of matchmaking and knowing the different types of biomass and running the reaction conditions in a way that matches the input to the output, that is something that we are retaining as a trade secret.
Yeah, that's great. Can you go to the last slide that you showed? This will be my last question. Just explain all the logos at the bottom there. They're more than I thought.
Yeah, I ran out of time at the end, unfortunately. So those 3, PG&E, Total, and Tata, are our industry supporters. And then we've had some grant funding from Schmidt Family Foundation. And then I guess our academic collaborators include Berkeley, and we've received funding from CalSeed, Department of Energy, and the NSF. But
you're still pre-Series A, or?
We are pre-Series A.
Okay, that's it for me. Thanks.
I'll follow up on that. I'm curious how much of your with the current model of being a service organization, how much are you sensitive to the price points of the activated carbon sale versus the removal of biomass? Because it sounds like you need both to make it work out.
Yes, so in terms of the price point, the idea is that for biomass, so I mean, we did a sensitivity analysis, and I mean, the whole thing, I mean, it's not so much sensitive to the end product, but it's much more sensitive actually to the feedstock, right? Because, I mean, due to the conversion rate, I mean, that amplifies throughout the whole unit economics. For that, obviously, biomass is highly context dependent, right? And so the thing is that, I mean, we have to, I mean, initially we are starting sort of at the small scale, I mean, so sort of small scale level, because at those areas, currently no other existing biomass, I mean, sort of technology have been able to make that work. And we believe that's also where our advantage for this logistics saving is going to be the most significant, because if you are a vegetation manager, whether you like it or not, wherever you are, you sort of have to deal with that vegetation. I mean, you don't really have a choice, right? So you sort of have to pay the cost anyways. And for that, we are reducing that cost by a factor of 3 to 10.
Thanks.
Yeah, Kevin, this is a good sustainability story. I was
you.
just wondering if you could maybe just give a little bit more color on your black box approach, because it's always hard to, you know, understand a little bit how reasonable of a technology this is. I understand there are some trade secrets and stuff, but you know, a lot of what you are mentioning sounds almost too good to be true. So I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Sure. So the process is a thermochemical process, and the technical term normally is reserved for that is torrefaction, which means that we are treating the incoming sort of organic matter under sort of moderate temperature, normally between 200 and 350 degrees C, under sort of a limited amount of oxygen. So what we're doing different in this case is we are actually introducing the oxygen directly into the reactor, unlike the other existing torrefaction reactors, which often use inert gases like nitrogen or CO2. And the idea is that if you have this oxygen-linked torrefaction, then you can just make use of room temperature air rather than recycling gases or have this very complicated system. And that's why we're able to simplify it. I can get into more detail of that if you want.
I think that's okay. But
I can send you some publications, I guess,
okay.
where we explain the technology.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to sign an NDA if you want to know more, I'm hearing.
Well, I mean, all of that is published.
No,
So
I'm just teasing.
And maybe write a check, right?
Great. Thank you, judges. Thank you, Kevin. Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next on to the virtual stage, I'd like to welcome Patrick Dietzen, representing Xiretsa. Patrick.
Hi, I'm Patrick Dietzen, co-founder of Xiretsa, and we're building the future of antibiotics. As many of you know, bacteria are getting more and more resistant to all the world's antibiotics, so much so that we're at risk of losing antibiotics entirely. And if we do, modern medicine will break down. We won't be able to do invasive procedures such as implants or joint replacements due to the infection risk. And many diseases that we can easily treat today will become deadly. There will also be a greater risk of pandemics, as some of the world's worst plagues were caused by bacteria. Despite this threat, new antibiotic approvals have been going down over the years. So now there's just not enough in the pipeline to keep up with the resistance. Already in the US alone, every 15 minutes a person dies from resistant bacteria. This has become such a big problem, it is now considered one of the top global threats, right up there with climate change. Fortunately, we have an amazing innovation to combat this threat. We've developed a new class of chemicals called ACEs. ACEs are the first new class of broad spectrum antibiotics to be discovered in over 50 years. Because of their novel mechanism of action, bacteria aren't resistant to them. ACEs were discovered much like penicillin was, serendipitously in Professor Bazan's lab at UCSB. We were researching energy production from bacteria and noticed that our early compounds were killing the bacteria at unprecedented levels, so we pivoted towards antibiotic development. ACEs are paradigm changing. They're easy to produce and modular, like Legos, which allows us to tune the structure to optimize for efficacy and safety. We modified our initial compounds to get the characteristics that are necessary for successful antibiotics, which led to a strong IP position with 3 patents from UCSB and NTU covering a wide range of potential disease applications. The IP is held by Xiretsa. We did studies on mice infected with superbug diseases that were deadly to hospital patients, and we've had a 100% survival rate. We can combat many infections, but we recognize that finding a viable market in the antibiotic space is difficult. This is because the overall market for new antibiotics is broken due to challenging economics, but the landscape is now changing as governments around the world are creating programs to incentivize antibiotic development. This includes the GAIN Act that provides extended patent life and the Pasteur Act that will provide $1 to $3 billion per drug in market entry awards. ACEs can combat many diseases and will benefit significantly from these policy changes. But we've identified a beachhead market that has such a large unmet need today, it doesn't depend on any of these government incentives. This market is NTM lung disease. So put aside any biases against the antibiotic space because our target market is extremely viable and profitable. NTM is a debilitating and chronic lung disease that can be deadly. Coughing can be so bad, it can break a rib. It's a $2.5 billion market, growing at 5% per year, and the current drug available to treat this is only 29% effective with horrible side effects such as deafness. We project over $1 billion in annual sales by our 5th year on the market. I should point out that the current drug that's only 29% effective has already had sales of $270 million in just the first couple years on the market with strong projected growth. We have an incredible team to tackle this problem. We have Guy Bizan, who's one of the world's top materials scientists, and 4 PhDs with expertise in microbiology and chemistry, as well as entrepreneurs with a proven track record. I had the privilege of previously co-founding UCSB spin-out company Xiretsa with Professor Bizan, which had a successful $70 million exit to Becton Dickinson. Xiretsa has $2 million in non-dilutive funding and is raising a $3 million seed round to develop a candidate that we can take through IND enabling studies. So here's the thing. Xiretsa is not only a fantastic investment, but it could save millions of lives, and who knows, it may even save your life as well. Thank you so much for listening.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Interesting potential life-saving technology. Thank you. Over to you, judges, for questions.
Maybe I can go first. So is there, you would call this a platform, I guess, for making molecules. Is there one in particular that you're taking forward first for NTM, and for the other judges, it's non-tuberculous mycobacterial lung disease? Is that the idea, to follow one through and then also have the platform to make others?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a platform. It's a new class of chemicals that can be tuned and optimized to go after different markets. But yeah, we would look to push one through for the NTM lung disease.
Is there a lead molecule right now? Is that what you tested in the animal models?
Yes, there's a lead. Yeah, there is a lead molecule. Yeah, that we tested in mice.
Okay.
In an NTM model, or?
So we haven't tested it in mice on NTM yet. We have done some initial in vitro testing on NTM and shown efficacy. So that's one of our next milestones, is to test it on mice on NTM specifically.
So this is more an investor question, I guess, but what's your strategy as a company for growth? What are you looking to get to? Are you looking to take the lead forward, or?
Yeah, so we're looking to get past the phase 1 trials, and then after that, we would look to partner with a larger pharmaceutical company. And I think we would also look for an exit opportunity at that point in the form of a sale of the company or IPO.
Okay.
I was wondering if you could comment on your FDA clearance. I think in your business plan, you have it going on for quite some time, 5 to 6 years. Is that right? And the amount of capital you think it would take to even get past, let's say if you were to get through phase 3, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean,
back to the timeline. Sorry, Patrick, get back to the timeline slide.
There's this one.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so the cost of getting a new drug to market is expensive, but this market that we're going after is very large. So being able to generate $1 billion in annual revenue is enough to justify the cost of getting to market. We wouldn't look to take it all away, but the total cost would be around $400 million to get it all the way to market. We're looking at a $50 million cost to get it past the phase 1 point. And part of that would come from grants. There's a lot of grants available in the antibiotic space to help fund the development. So we'd be looking at an exit opportunity within a 5-year window.
How many for those clinical trials? How many patients does that normally require in this particular space, and how many per data? How do you design a trial for this?
Yeah, so what we're planning on working with so a lot of these patients for NTM are from our cystic fibrosis patients. And so we're planning on looking at working with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, who we've had some initial conversations with, and they can help us with, kind of the recruitment process when it's time to do trials. The trials, are, phase 1, anywhere from 50 to 100 people, and then they kind of go up phase 2, larger quantities, and phase 3 is the largest.
Thank you.
Can I ask about the platform then? Because you got the one molecule, which like most molecules may or may not work, but the platform itself is about the modularity of creating molecules. There is intellectual property, you said, I think around the platform, not just this molecule. But can you tell us a little bit more detail? What's the special part of the platform here?
Yeah, so it's a new class of materials. And so the IP, we have 3 patents that cover, composition of matter around some of the specific compounds, and we're able to, make modification of these compounds and then test them. And we've shown that we've been able to make changes to the structure and then improve the properties, whether it's safety or efficacy. And so, we expect to expand the IP portfolio as we do that.
And so you mentioned safety, you have some indication this class will be tolerable and safe?
Yeah, we've done some studies. Okay. We've done studies on mice, and we had 100% survival rate there. And we've done some toxicity studies where we amplified the dose by 5 times, and it was fine with the mice.
Okay, thank you. Great presentation. And now I'd like to invite the final presenter of the early stage track. Please welcome Mohammed Diab from Auctus Surgical. Mohammed?
Hi. I want to just say how impressed I am by what I've heard. It's really great. That's a big bonus for me to be part of this. Thanks for inviting us. I'm a surgeon, so you're going to hear a medical talk. And I feel that's the value I can bring to you all. And the company is Auctus. John Barrett started it, and he's listening. This is I, and I'm one of the vice chairs in the Department of Orthopedic Surgery at UCSF. And I'm a surgeon. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, and I take care of kids. And I'm an axial skeleton surgeon, so spine and pelvis. So it's sort of high risk, high profile. And I think for this kind of audience, I think high profile matters. And then these are the other surgical co-founders, and they're all nationally and internationally recognized as experts in their field. This is what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the spine, and I'm going to talk about scoliosis. And scoliosis is twisting of the spine. And then I'm going to talk about surgery, and I'm going to talk about instrumentation, which means putting in a device. And in this case, it's a screw in every bone in the spine connected by a cable. And I'm going to talk about the concept of tethering. I was one of the original people, probably second in the US to do it. And that means the second in the world because the US started this. So I'm going about tethering, which is this concept of the spine has asymmetric growth. That's why it curves. And if you come in on the side that's growing fast and stop it, then the side that's growing slowly will continue to grow. And you can take a curved spine and take advantage of growth and let it grow straight. And then a particular advantage of what we have is that you can control that with a magnet from the outside as much as you like in pretty much any medical setting, and it's safe. In my world, scoliosis matters because it's a high profile condition. Patients and healthcare providers are very focused on it. And from your sort of standpoint, it represents an opportunity. It's quite common. We say 1% of the population. The treatments are imperfect at best. Bracing is one type, but it's got a low compliance rate and many suspect it doesn't work at all. And there are about 40,000 fusions in the US. So it's a pretty big problem for us. So what are the advantages of tethering? This is the new. So I started doing tethers in the early 2000s. And the reason we all were looking for an alternative is because it doesn't make sense even to us to stick the bones together. But these are the sort of the main advantages. It's physiologic. You don't destroy the spine the way you do when you do a fusion. You come in, you put the device on, and then you leave. So the patient has less pain. We don't transfuse them. They don't get infections. It's a much easier operation for the patient. You preserve motion, which is what the spine is supposed to do. You harness something that's already there, growth. It's free. Why not take advantage of it? And for me, what gets me excited and why I'm so keen on doing this is there's a potential just to cure this disease once and for all, not treat it by converting the spine into something that it's not supposed to be, but actually make it just go away. These are sort of the practical advantages. The OR time is less. That's a cost. The length of stay is less. That's a cost center. And I think roughly we probably would turn this operation or this experience into a third of its total cost. And the revenue per patient is as stated there. We know that you can harness growth in the skeleton. This is one of my patients who came in with knock knees, severe knock knees and having difficulty walking. And I can put something as simple as a screw or a staple, and Blount is the person that I have here. And you just watch them grow straight. So we know this works. It just everything takes a lot longer to get to the spine because the risks are so much higher. So this has been done for, Blount's report was in 1948 in the long bones, and now it's come to the spine. This is the current state. There is a cable that connects screws that are put into the different bones, the vertebrae in the spine. The problem is the cable is polyester and it breaks. And the other problem is that these are set screws that go into the main screws, and it's a fixed system. So it's not adjustable. So I operate on patients and I do high risk operations and I guess. And if I'm a patient, I'd be pretty disappointed if my surgeon is guessing how to treat me. But that's the best we have right now. I don't know how much to tension them to straighten them. If I do it too much, they'll continue to grow on the other side and overcorrect. If I don't put enough tension, then I won't get them to straighten up. And I still don't know how much to do. So we need something that's adjustable. This is an example from one of my patients. I did a nice operation on her, got her pretty straight, and then the cable broke. And then she turned off to the side. Here's another example. This is a 6-year-old many years ago. And then last year she came. So the technology works. So for you as the audience, this does change scoliosis. But now she's beginning to overcorrect the other direction. So I have to give her a second operation and take the cable out and replace it with a looser cable. That's not ideal. So where are we, Auctus? We have a cable that's much stronger than the one used. And ultra high molecular weight polyethylene is widely distributed in orthopedics. So we know this substance works in the skeleton in other forms, including hip replacement or knee replacement arthroplasty. The other is we have an adjustable system. We use a magnet that can be activated from the outside in the clinic. So it's not an operative, it's not a procedure, and the patient doesn't feel anything. And we know that magnets work because here's another patient of mine who came with a very short leg. I hope you can see my arrow. This is the amount that I've lengthened this child. And I did it by cutting his bone. This used to be up here. And I put this metal device in with a magnet. And in the clinic, I just activate the magnet and I slowly lengthen him over time. So we know that this will work in humans, in the skeleton. We're just now applying it to the spine. This is where we are. We have the device. This is the cable over a spool. This is the magnetically activated device. And these are the screws. And we've shown that this works in a live pig model. In my world, the live pig model is the best proxy for a human. So we know it works. And this is what it would look like on an X-ray. And this is sort of a schematic of it. This is the magnetically activated device. And this is what it looks like. The screws go into the spine, and this is the cable, and this responds to the magnet. So I'm just going to conclude by saying, I think scoliosis matters in all of orthopedic surgery, in all of surgery. And I would like to think that we can actually cure it by having kids just grow out of their scoliosis. And in my world, that's sort of earth-shaking. If you can turn this condition where the treatment is so brutal, when we do it, but it's not ideal, and have kids just magically grow out of their scoliosis, that is a fundamental shift in the way we treat patients. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mohammed. Turning over to you, judges. I think we really enjoy your doctor talk.
Yeah, I'll start this time. Thanks very much. Really interesting stuff. I'm curious, is the main IP that you're looking at is around the magnetization? So is your competition in terms of the surgical device similar? And are you mainly looking to capture more of the market? And then also, are you looking to expand the market because you feel that doctors would be more likely to do this surgery if they have this adaptation?
Yeah, so putting a screw in a bone is not original.
Yeah.
And using a cable is not original, but the cable composition is original. Using a magnet in orthopedics is not original, but using it in this setting is original. There is no other. There is no other magnetically activated device like this, and there's no other cable like this. So it's not that we're going to share the area. We hope to replace the current system with what we have. And then I think that if we time it right, there should be no child who escapes childhood with scoliosis. So we want the entire market in kids. And that will be a significant proportion of the adult market. Right now, they get into adulthood because the treatments are imperfect. If we can get them at the right, they'll just grow out of their scoliosis. So it's going to be a pretty sizable market that we're going for. Did I answer your question?
You did. Yeah, you answered me from an aspirational standpoint. I'm trying to understand how many of these surgeries are done annually, say in the US, and what you think the market growth potential is.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that the number of operations done in childhood would be over 10,000. And the number total, if you include adults, would be probably 4x that. But once you show that this device can work in childhood, it will be applied in the adult setting. I mean, adults care about spine mobility as much as kids do. Now you could say, well, in the kids' world, it's more because you can harness their growth and then it can just go away. But let's say you put growth aside. If you had scoliosis and you had the opportunity to have a fusionless treatment, which would preserve your motion, there is no patient who's going to come to me and say, no, I'd rather have a fusion. It's impossible.
Thanks.
Can you describe just the intellectual property so far in terms of patents and any existing funding or support to date?
Victoria, can John Barrett answer that? Are you there?
I'm here. Are
Yeah.
you saying, can your co-founder answer that question?
Yes, I think that's better. You need accuracy, just like I don't want anybody to talk about scoliosis except me. Let him tell you all the details of that so I don't get it wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I can touch on that. We've got patents in process. Originally filed patents on the magnetic system, the adjustability, the screws. There's some other novel aspects of the particulars of the implants that were covered. We originally filed a patent back in 2017. It's sort of going through the works now. And we also have patents on magnetically growing rods that we licensed from UCSF. So we actually have issued patents in the magnetic growing rod space as well.
And
Yeah, I can add that I was part of the original group that came up with the magnetically growing rods, different system with a different endpoint. That endpoint is fusion, but it may have a role, but I think this will move that out of the armamentarium for what we do.
And just have you raised any money so far to date or any support so far?
We've got about $500,000 in. We're currently raising a seed round of $2 million. We've got $150,000 in non-dilutive capital from some awards from different pitch competitions, pediatric device consortium competitions. And so we're kind of ongoing with the seed raise. Great,
thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, judges. So I want to thank all the founders for your presentations. We really enjoy learning about your technologies. Now the judges are going to break away to deliberate, and then I'm going to turn over the event to my colleague, Andrea French.
We'd like to do two things while the judges deliberate. The first is to introduce Barrett Parkman for brief remarks. He is the Director of Startup and VC Ecosystem at Samsung Catalyst Fund and co-managing director of Extreme Tech Challenge, our premier partner for this competition.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be part of the UC Startup Innovation Challenge. Thanks to all the early stage UC startups that pitched today. We're all truly inspired by your drive to build technologies that address global challenges and improve human life and improve the environment. I'm Barrett Parkman, a director of the Samsung Catalyst Fund, co-managing director of Extreme Tech Challenge. While the judges are deliberating today, I'm going to tell you just take a few minutes to tell you a little bit more about the Extreme Tech Challenge. I think it's clear to all of us, it's clearer than ever that the world is facing extreme challenges. From COVID-19 that has infected millions globally, to climate change that is causing natural disasters around the world, to deep inequalities that exclude entire populations from opportunities and progress. However, there remains great hope, and we are seeing a new generation of entrepreneurs like never before who are fully aware of the challenges that the world is facing. They're leveraging their ingenuity and hustle to build innovative solutions to the world's most extreme problems, many like you see today. This is why Extreme Tech Challenge, a 501c3 nonprofit, exists to elevate the next generation of entrepreneurs creating new technologies and innovations to benefit humankind. XTC is supported by 45 global partners, including Samsung, University of California, Ford, Global Corporate Venturing, Hyundai, Microsoft, Intel, NXP, Fujitsu, Cisco, and many others. They partner with XTC to get a firsthand look into high growth companies that are doing good for the world and also for them to help them find potential collaborations. The goal of the Extreme Tech Challenge is simple. It's to find world-changing companies and help them succeed. Using the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a framework, XTC looks for standout startups in ag tech, clean tech, education, fintech, health, enabling technologies, and smart cities. XTC also has special awards for female founders and COVID innovation. XTC finds startups that are innovating for good and empowers them with a network of investors, corporations, and mentors so they can access the resources they need to scale their business and their impact. XTC helps startups gain visibility, raise capital, launch corporate collaborations, and get some mentorship along the way. Last year, over 2,400 startups from 87 countries applied to XTC 2020 that culminated in July. Over 100 global VCs reviewed the applications and selected just 52 finalists. These startups have raised over $50 million since becoming XTC finalists, despite the headwinds of a pandemic. The result was 8 winning startups selected from thousands that are truly building incredible companies. To highlight a few of the XTC 2020 winners, the overall global winner was Genesis, an innovative startup that converts food waste into biodegradable plastics and other high-value materials, helping to reduce the 18 million pounds of plastic polluting our oceans every year. The fintech category was Rewire. They are a digital banking platform that is designed to serve the unique needs of migrants wherever they are. And then the last one to highlight is TitleCare. It's the winner of the COVID-19 Innovation Award. Their all-in-one telehealth platform is transforming healthcare delivery with on-demand medical exams with healthcare provider from the comfort of home. For XTC 2021, XTC is hosting over 15 regional startup competitions in as many countries. At each, finalists are selected and invited to join the XTC Bootcamp and Finals that will take place in May and June. Their startups will gain the opportunity to connect with senior executives and investors and then pitch in hopes to become the XTC 2021 global winner. And if you're the founder of a startup that is improving lives and environment, you can still join XTC. Go to extremetechchallenge.org to apply by March 31st. Alternatively, if you represent a corporation, VC firm, or a university, please reach out to explore how you can get involved to enable startups to address global challenges. Thank you very much, and I'll hand it back to you, Andrea.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Barrett.
We're ready to announce the winner. It's my pleasure to announce the winner of the early stage track of the 2021 UC-XTC Startup Innovation Challenge. Congratulations to Takachar. As the winner, Takachar will receive a $50,000 cash prize and also automatically advance to the final round of XTC, which will hold its global finals later this summer. Kevin, would you like to say a few words?
Wow, very excited about this. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, had a great time pitching and hearing the others, and well, I'm blown away by this.
I want to also congratulate and recognize all 5 finalists for the important work that you're doing to improve our world. Thank you to our live judging panel, Atul Butte, Chris Chu, and Chris Haskell for the great questions and your great insights. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with the second part of the showcase, the Grow Stage track. Welcome to the second half of the competition, featuring the Grow Stage track. To introduce our judging panel for this session, I'm pleased to welcome Srini Anand, Investment Director at Intel Capital, Scott Levine, Managing Director, Samsung Catalyst Fund, Nicolas Savange, Managing Director, TDK Ventures, and Alessandro Zago, Senior Director of Venture Investment at Hyundai Credo. Now you will meet 5 finalists for the Grow Stage track across 4 campus affiliations as alumni, faculty, and former staff. Each founder will present for 5 minutes, followed by a 5-minute Q&A with the judges. I'd like to first invite to the stage John Bean of Mem Computing. John?
Okay, so hi, I am John Bean. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mem Computing. We're disrupting the high-performance computing market by delivering the performance expected of quantum computing with our non-quantum solution. The scale of many optimization problems today, like routing, scheduling, analytics, and AI, is such that it would take years to provide an optimal solution. So companies have to rely upon approximations, which leads to cost inefficiencies in the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars on an annual basis. Quantum computing is looking to solve these problems. However, quantum computing is still in its infancy. It's at least 10 years before it'll be available at scale. That's where Mem Computing comes in. Like quantum computing, Mem Computing is a physics-based approach to computation. Mem Computing is harnessing the power of the physics associated with digital circuit design in ways never before imagined. We've completely reinvented standard logic gates by developing self-organizing logic gates, or SOLGs. They eliminate the bottleneck associated with current computers where the CPU and memory are separate. Instead, each SOLG is a mini processor with memory. SOLGs negotiate in a highly parallelized manner to solve a problem. Each SOLG is aware of all changes in the circuit as they occur. In physics, this is known as spatial non-locality and is similar to quantum entanglement. However, MemComputing is doing this at scale today. MemComputing circuits act more like a brain than a computer. Let me show you some examples of what we've been able to do with our virtual MemComputing machine, which has been live since 2019. The Port of Singapore came to us with a series of problems associated with port optimization. And the smallest of their problem was taking over 70 hours to solve with today's best-in-class solution. The largest problem would actually take years to solve, so it's actually intractable for them today. With MemComputing, we were able to solve the 70-hour problem in less than a second, and the multi-year problem we solved in less than a minute. Another problem that we've addressed is associated with the quantum computing challenge presented by Airbus. We took the problem that's associated with the optimal loading of cargo on an aircraft. Again, quantum computing will not be able to address this problem at scale for at least 10 more years. However, our virtual MemComputing machine is able to address this problem at scales that are experienced by real-life corporations dealing with this situation. And our compute time to solve this problem was less than 7 minutes. With these and other problems that we've solved for our customers, we're demonstrating the ability to save tens of millions of dollars easily on an annual basis. We're focusing on the high-performance computing market and targeting transportation logistics, oil and gas, and the Department of Defense, where we have already made significant headway and have an ever-growing customer base. The serviceable market for these three sub-markets is $2 billion. Now, our revenue for 2020 was slightly delayed due to project delays. However, we've already booked $1 million of the $1.5 million that was previously projected for 2021. In fact, we're looking to update our projection for 2021 to $3 million, which is a pretty nice problem to have. And we hope to raise a Series A this year that will allow us to concentrate on commercial chip development. If so, that will begin, or that will happen in 2022. And then we should be well set, even though it's not shown in these projections, to raise a Series B in 2023 or possibly 2024 that will really set us up very nicely for a hockey stick growth. Now, the technology was invented at UC San Diego by physics professor Dr. Max DeVentra and PhD physicist Fabio Traversa. In 2016, I was serving as an entrepreneur in residence at UC San Diego. That is where we met, and we decided to form the company and commercialize the technology. Prior to that, as a serial entrepreneur, my companies have returned more than $1.5 billion to investors at about a 12x ROI. And we've also been very fortunate to be joined by a small but dedicated team of scientists and engineers who were able to bring the product to market in 2019 and have been doing a fantastic job supporting our customer base. Thank you for your time, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you, John. A great presentation. Okay, great. I'm going to turn it over to the judges for your questions.
Hey, John, great presentation. Trying to understand, you're talking about circuits there. What is it that you're actually developing? Are you developing the chip, or are you developing the circuits that could be licensed to others? What is your product for the customers?
So our first product, the virtual Mem Computing machine, is actually an emulation of our circuit design. And it's been designed to run specifically on GPUs and CPUs, and it's a cloud-based solution today. And that's where we're looking for the Series A so we can start developing the chip. But that's one of the things that's so amazing about this technology is the circuit is so efficient that the emulation of this circuit is already orders of magnitude faster than anything else that's out there today.
Got it. Thank you.
So just so I understand, so the emulation of these problems running on a GPU is orders of magnitude faster than if you just took that code and compiled it for that GPU?
So the emulation is compiled for the GPU, but where it takes, minutes or seconds to solve a problem today, the difference is that the chip is designed for real-time solution. So when we actually develop our chip, the same problem that we may have taken 7 minutes to solve for Airbus would be solved in microseconds.
Oh, so the times that you're showing are not actual times; those are estimated times?
No, these are actual times. The virtual Mem Computing machine is live today. It's a cloud-based solution. We've got over a dozen customers that are using it, and it's live. And again, that's one of the things that's just so incredible about this circuit design is the emulation is already orders of magnitude faster than anything that's out there.
Got it. And when do you think you'll tape out and have a chip available?
So that's why we're trying to raise a Series A this year. And if so, then we'll have chips available in 2022.
And sorry, John, to put this in context, in the future, once we will have quantum computing available, maybe in 10 years or so, what's the rate of progression of your technology versus quantum computing down the road? How do you compare this technology with the best in class that we will have at some point, including now the Google already have something, a prototype, and IBM and so on?
Sure. Yeah, they're still in their infancy though. They're only solving toy-sized problems. They're not able to solve problems that scale for industry. And if you look at it, quantum computing has been worked on by hundreds of people over the past 20 years, and they've spent billions of dollars. What we've developed, we did in 3 years with 5 engineers and about $2.5 million. And that's, again, just the software emulation. The chips will be real time. We don't solve every problem that quantum computing solves, but we solve a good portion of those, especially when you're talking about optimization problems. But then we deal with other real-time problems as well, real-time computational issues. We'll be developing a chip that's specific for image processing and another one that will serve the 5G communication market. And we're working with the DoD, and one of the projects that we're working on is related to computations at the satellite level. So one of the key advantages to the emulation is that, in essence, it could be uploaded to satellites that are in space today, increasing their compute performance. But that ultimately what we're talking about is a chip, so that with quantum computing, even when it's fully at scale, you're talking about a very large computer, where our performance is going to come from a chip. These chips can be installed on embedded systems, on satellites. We're actually working on another problem with an aerospace company on scheduling the motion planning for a swarm of drones. And the plan is to put a chip on the drone as well.
Well, my one last question is, given the size of the high performance computing market, and if you can really run 70, 100 times faster, it seems like the revenue should be a lot larger. Like if I'm a company spending 70 hours of compute time on AWS, but I could be doing it on 1 hour on your solution, you think you'd be able to accrete a lot more revenue to the company. So maybe the first question is your solution extensible to all kinds of algorithms, or is it just best suited to a certain class of optimization problems?
So it's extensible to all kinds of optimization problems. The issue has actually been that, quite honestly, the technology it appears to be too good to be true, to people, so that it's been slow to get awareness and build the customer base. People are naturally skeptical, but we've been overcoming that, and things are starting to grow on a much faster basis. So yes, I wish that our revenue was much higher at this point as well, but we're working through just developing a frontier technology. And I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of your question.
No, I think that settles it. Yeah, it's a question of extensibility and then revenue expectations. It sounds like it's more of a sales and market channel issue.
Exactly.
Potentially.
And it's also partly, that we're still a small company and we only have limited capacity. So the Series A is really one of the things that's going to give us the ability to grow the team and meet the greater demand that's starting to really come in.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up, I'd like to invite Courtney Young, representing MyoGene Bio.
Thanks so much. I'm Courtney Young, one of the co-founders and the CEO of MyoGene Bio, which is a biotech startup dedicated to developing cutting-edge therapies for muscle diseases, starting with a gene editing therapy for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Our additional co-founders are Dr. Melissa Spencer and Dr. April Pyle. We did the initial development of our first therapy during my PhD and postdoc in their labs at UCLA, and they have important expertise in muscular dystrophy and stem cells, and Dr. Spencer has run 2 clinical trials in Duchenne. So the problem we're working to solve is a disease called Duchenne muscular dystrophy, or DMD, which is a really horrible disease. It's caused by genetic mutations that result in a lack of the dystrophin protein, which normally protects muscle. In Duchenne, boys typically lose the ability to walk in their early teens and die in their 20s or 30s. And there's currently no cure and only a few FDA-approved therapies that have limited efficacy and are only applicable for small subsets of patients. This photo on the right is a photo of my cousin Christopher, who was diagnosed with Duchenne in 2008. This is what got me into this field and represents the patients that inspire us to develop meaningful therapies for muscle diseases. So our solution is a therapy called MyoDis 4555, which uses state-of-the-art AAV delivery of CRISPR-Cas9 for gene editing to remove a hotspot area of patient mutations, applicable for around half of all patients. This targets the underlying cause of disease to restore the dystrophin protein that is otherwise lacking. On the right is some of our data looking at sections of muscle, either from an untreated DMD control or a treated muscle. And after MyoDis treatment, we see significantly more dystrophin protein present, shown in green. And this is expected to make the muscle healthier and significantly improve the disease course in Duchenne. And although CRISPR is still relatively new, it is being used in human clinical trials for other diseases. Duchenne affects around 1 in 3,500 to 5,000 boys worldwide. It's classified as a rare disease, but is one of the most common forms of muscular dystrophy. The overall market has been estimated to reach about $5 billion by 2026. As I mentioned, our approach is applicable for around half of all Duchenne patients. This is significantly more than the current genetic therapies for Duchenne that are representative of and target only around 8 to 13% of Duchenne patients. This leads us to having a target market of around 15,000 to 25,000 patients in the US and Europe. So MyoDis has significant benefits compared to existing and new genetic medicines for Duchenne. This includes the fact that it results in permanent editing of the DNA, that it targets more patients than the therapies that are applicable for only 8 to 13% of patients. It creates a better dystrophin protein that's been associated with mild disease in humans. And we retain significantly more of the protein compared to other gene therapy approaches. This is a schematic of the normal dystrophin protein. Our approach retains about 87% of the protein coding sequence, in contrast to competing gene therapies that only retain about 30% of the dystrophin protein. Thus, we are significantly more of the protein closer to a normal size dystrophin, expected to have improved functionality. And lastly, we maintain the endogenous gene promoter and regulatory sequences, all aiming to make MyoDis a better and more functional therapy compared to the other approaches. So we're currently in our preclinical development. We have an exclusive license agreement for the underlying technology, have initially been funded by grants, and are located in an incubator space at UCLA. We're conducting preclinical and safety studies with the aim to get to an important value inflection point by filing an IND by the end of 2022. We'll then progress into human clinical trials, taking advantage of regulatory incentives and the need for smaller trials where there is clinical trial infrastructure and outcome measures in place for Duchenne. There's also potential for acquisition or partnership with larger biopharma, as pharma has been becoming involved earlier and earlier in these fields. And we can also expand into other forms of muscular dystrophy using a similar approach. So we need your help. We're currently raising a Series A round of around 25 million, and we're looking for more investors. So far, our funding has been from grants and friends and family, and we're raising money to complete our preclinical development and get to an IND filing by the end of 2022. Help us develop this important therapy and save boys like my cousin Christopher. Thank you, and I look forward to further conversation.
Great, thank you for your thoughtful presentation, Courtney. I'd like to turn it over to the judges for your comments and questions.
I guess
maybe I'll start with just a very simple question. You mentioned business model, but I'm not clear how you're going to grow. How do you see your company in 10 years from now? Assuming that everything worked.
Yeah, so we're definitely focused on the research and development aspects. So we would anticipate completing our kind of preclinical and early clinical stage development of our initial therapies in-house, and then partnering with a larger biopharma, most likely for kind of late stage clinical trials and commercialization. And then we can just bring in and develop new preclinical and early clinical assets. So focusing kind of on the research and development aspects, there is always potential for us to kind of grow and expand into the commercial roles down the line. But our interest at the moment is really focusing on that. So kind of being a research and development type company that then will feed into later stage pharma companies.
Okay.
You mentioned something about your approach having more protein. Can you sort of translate, what does that translate to in terms of the therapy itself or in terms of the treatment? What does that do?
Yeah, so basically our approach, it retains more of the protein, meaning we have more parts of the protein that are present that are missing in other strategies using gene therapy. And that's just due to the limitations of what can be delivered with gene therapy. They've had to, dystrophin is a very large protein, so they've had to pare it down to kind of the minimal essential pieces. And so what we expect is that by maintaining more of the protein and having more of these functional pieces, it will allow for dystrophin to play a more important role in muscle. We have some of the domains that are missing in other gene therapy approaches that link different aspects of the cell architecture. So we expect that that will all come together to make it a more functional, kind of longer lasting type of gene therapy approach compared to using this kind of small version of the protein.
Got it. So would you say that in a way it's more effective as a form of treatment, or are there any impact on faster recovery, or what would the patient actually see?
Yeah, what we would expect is for it to be a more functional treatment, so it would maintain the integrity of the muscle better. So with muscle in Duchenne, what happens is that the muscle cells tend to die, and then the muscle tissue gets replaced with fat and scar tissue. Whereas if you kind of restore a protein like ours, that'll prevent that from happening, maintain muscle function, allow for patients to walk and move their arms, and improve lifespan.
Got it. Thank you.
You use CRISPR to do the gene editing. And I guess my question is this, you're focusing only on this disease, or you have a roadmap to focus and target other maybe similar or complementary disease? It's basically just one single product, or it's more like of a platform that can give me other products down the road? What's your thought?
Yeah, so we ultimately hope to have a platform approach of using AAV delivery of CRISPR for muscle diseases. At the moment, we're heavily focused on this initial Duchenne therapy, but we have ideas of ways to target other types of muscular dystrophy, all of which have a really high unmet medical need. And you can take a kind of similar approach to what we're doing with Duchenne with multiple other kinds of limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, fasciohumeral muscular dystrophy, and so on. So we definitely hope to aim it kind of as a muscle gene editing type of approach.
And you say that also the solution is permanent. Can you elaborate on that? Why you're sure that this is permanent? And
yeah,
is there evidence?
Sorry. Gene editing basically will edit the DNA that's located inside the cell. And so this will permanently change what's happening in that cell. And if that cell then divides, it will actually propagate that change in the DNA to daughter cells. And that's why we refer to it as being permanent changes, in contrast to things like gene therapy, where the gene therapy lasts as like a circle of DNA in the nucleus and it gets lost during cell division. This changes the endogenous DNA of the cell that then gets passed on to any daughter cells. The one thing about muscle is that there are endogenous stem cells. So if you can target the stem cells, that will then continue to propagate that CRISPR edited nuclei throughout the muscle. But at the moment, we don't know if there is very highly efficient muscle stem cell targeting. So we've also been developing ways to redose this approach so that you could give it multiple times over the lifetime of a patient in case there is new muscle being formed that hasn't been edited. But anything that is formed from an edited cell will maintain that correction. That's what we mean by permanent.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Courtney, for your thoughtful presentation. Next up, I'd like to invite to the virtual stage is Kieran Sway from Sophie's BioNutrients. Kieran?
My name is Kieran, so I'm with Sophie's BioNutrients. We're a Singapore-run company. Today, I'm presenting you a sustainable urban protein. How are we going to feed 10 billion people by the year 2050? The global food security crisis has been an ongoing topic for years. The conventional way of farming, it takes large spaces and other resources to grow our foods. And it is labor intensive. Plus, you got to truck back to the metropolitan area for people to consume. So we believe that the current agriculture practice is just not insufficient to grow foods. And also, growing soy or beef or livestock, it stresses the environment. That leads to climate change and deforestation. We believe that we have a game changer solutions to solve this problem. So we have a technology using fermentation process to grow protein using microalgae for high quality protein, other than just using soy and meat protein. And why? We believe it's sustainable, it's nutritious, it tastes good, it's affordable. Sorry. So why do we use fermentation? It takes less water for grow microalgae, for example. For cattle farming, it takes about 4,500 liters of water to make 6 hamburger patties. For us, we just need 2 liters of water to grow 1 gram of protein. And we can recycle the water as well. It also takes less land. It takes about 140 hectares of land to grow cattle for protein. But for us, we need about 5,000 square feet of space to grow 1 ton of protein per day. And that's enough to feed 5,000 people. And because growing microalgae in the fermentation tank in the dark does not expose to sunlight for energy. So we have to feed microalgae with the food waste. So that creates a totally circular economy status. And microalgae grow really fast. And we can harvest the microalgae in 3 days. Compared to soy, it takes about 3 months to harvest. The market size for alternative protein, whether it's plant-based plus the cell-based meat, it's going to be about $100 billion in 2035. And our price right now is still at a premium. But we believe once we scale up, our price is going to be comparable to soy or pea protein in the future. Our IP is protected from fermentation process to protein extraction. And you can use microalgae for various different applications for food manufacturing. Biomass can be used for animal feeds. Protein powders can be used for plant-based milk. And texturized protein can be used for plant-based meats. And we are Singapore Food Agency certified, and we are working on other certification for international standards. So our first product going to be on the market is going to be a plant-based chicken essence. It's really big markets in Asia. We're also working with the food manufacturer in Singapore, working on crab cake with microalgae. And then we use the microalgae waste to make cell-based meat scaffolds. That's the 3D cellular scaffold that you can use for cell-based meat in the future. And we are talking to multinational companies such as Nestle potential collaboration. Our business model is in direct B2B direct sales for finished product, licensing our technology, or other byproducts such as oil or carbohydrates. This is our team. Our team is for experts or experience in food manufacturing, fermentation, extraction, ingredients, and nutrition. Our advisor team from food tech to microalgae to AI. The current fundraising updates. We got our first bucket goal from Temasek Foundation back in the end of 2019 as a grant. And we closed out seed round of money from a Swiss company last September. We're currently being offered from a sovereignty funds for term sheet, but we have not signed yet. Still in the evaluation process. Our ask is $5 million is to build a microalgae pilot plant in Singapore by end of this year. Thank you.
Great, interesting technology. Thank you, Kieran.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
Judges, on to your questions.
Yeah, this is amazing, a very good presentation, amazing technology. You know, I'm not from the food agricultural business, but the stats seem very impressive. You know, there's been a whole slew of plant-based meat companies in the United States coming up in the last few years. How do those compare with yours on microalgae? Microalgae, you know, in land or power or water, or
Sure,
what
Scott.
other metrics you guys choose?
Sure. So a company like Beyond or Impossible, they use mostly peat or soy protein based. And we believe that for ongoing in the future for sustainability, we think microalgae can be an alternate solution other than soy or peat protein. Because with soy or peat, you still got to go out to get more a massive land to grow the crops. But for microalgae, you do it within the closed system. So it can be easily installed the system within the city limits. So I think that's a key for our technology.
Thank you.
Sure.
So maybe double clicking on this, Kieran, how do you see the unit economics improving over time? Like 5 years down the line, do you think you could be 2 times, 10 times cheaper than Beyond and Impossible? Or
I would think so.
How's your unit?
Yeah, sure. I think within times, once we scale up the production, I say we're predicting about 5 years. Once we still scale up production with the supply and demand, we can actually supply our protein to Beyond. So,
but explain how you think you can improve. I mean, the scaling I understand, but what is fundamental that makes your cost going to be much cheaper than the alternatives today?
So basically, with the bigger scale, the plan, so that will bring the cost down. So for example, if we can build a microalgae fermentation plant for 600 tons plant, that price will dramatically drop.
Okay.
Can you talk about distribution as you see? I mean, Beyond and Memphis and all of them, seems like a lot of larger chains have started to adopt them. And then you also see McDonald's and a few others starting to develop their own. As you see more and more brands, how do you go and seek distribution? Are you going to try to stay B2B? Are you trying to approach supermarket, grocery chains?
We're not doing B2C business, so we're doing B2B. So customers like Beyond or Nestle, that will be a potential customer, or a big multinational ingredients company, such as ADM, they will be our customers. So we're not doing B2C market at this point. We're doing B2B ingredients business.
Great, thank you. Interesting technology, Kieran. Congratulations.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you.
Great. Next presenter, I'd like to welcome Alice Agogino, representing Squishy Robotics. Alice.
My name is Alice Agagino, as Victoria said, and I'm CEO of Squishy Robotics and a professor of mechanical engineering at UC Berkeley. Squishy Robotics provides life-saving, cost-saving information in real time through a rapidly deployable mobile sensor robots. We have an innovative solution that provides time-critical data to first responders when and where it's needed. As a use case, this example that happened was a chlorine tanker derailment that happened in the dead of night in South Carolina. The first responders that responded to the scene didn't know what they were walking into, and they didn't realize that the tanker had dangerous chlorine gas inside. As a result of poor situation awareness, there were 9 fatalities and over 600 injuries. When every second counts, our sensor robots can be rapidly deployed by aerial vehicles. We've dropped them successfully 400 feet from a drone, 600 feet from a helicopter, and 1,000 feet from fixed-wing aircraft. They can survive the landing and can continue to provide time-critical data to first responders. During this training scenario that you see in this video with the Los Angeles County Fire Department, our robot was dropped from a drone next to an overturned tanker. First responders were able to view chemical sensor data and the video feed from our sensor robot from a safe distance. This is just one example where Squishy Robotics provides life-saving, cost-saving information in real time through our rapidly deployable mobile sensor robots. You might ask, how do first responders get situation awareness now? Well, the problem is that this is a typical scenario of what they will do. They have to suit up with hazmat suits, this personal protection equipment. It can take them 90 minutes to do that. Then they have to hand place the sensors in the perimeter around a disaster area. And while they are doing this, they're exposing themselves and the community to danger. This is where Squishy Robotics provides an alternate solution. Our sensor robots are impact resistant, can be deployed in fleets. They have 6 cameras on board and provide 360-degree vision capabilities, and they can carry customizable payloads. The hardware is coupled with our distributed computing architecture that blends edge computing and data fusion to support data-informed decisions in real time with the ability to create mesh networks if communication is a problem. Cloud computing and machine intelligence will improve our data analytics over time. So we're starting out in 3 markets right now. We started out first with the public safety drone accessory market. We're currently in the defense remote monitoring market and entering the commercial remote monitoring and industrial Internet of Things market. We have 3 business models that we're working with our customers on. We provide customized sensing solution with the hardware. We provide third-party delivery system as well, which is what we are currently doing in the military. And we're working on monitoring and inspection as a service. Our revenue models include hardware sales and then recurring sales of software, data analytics, and services. We have interviewed over 250 customers in our various markets. We feel we have a deep understanding of what their needs are and what the opportunities are. We've completed 8 large-scale testing demos. We have 4 strategic partners. We have 3 signed paid partners, and we have $1.2 million of contracts and grants. We are working with the largest and most influential fire departments in the country, such as what you see here with a pilot that we're running with Southern Manatee Fire and Rescue as we speak. Squishy Robotics achievements have achieved great press, and we've been able to use this earned media to help us with our customer development. Looking to the future, we have a product platform roadmap. We're pilot testing in the field with first responders in the military, the stationary robot that you saw in the video I showed earlier. Our mobile robot in the center is being tested in the lab right now. These mobile robots have the capability of walking in a kind of a rolling motion that can walk over rough terrain, and they would walk next to or in front of first responders. Future work includes putting rotors on the rods so that we put them on the rods between the cables. They can perform low aerial flying maneuvers, such as hopping over a fence. Next in line is the development of a floating robot as requested by our partners in flood-prone areas. Squishy Robotics is a spin-off of my research at UC Berkeley. with NASA to develop planetary probes for space exploration. The probe could orbit a planet, drop to the surface and survive the drop and walk away and do scientific monitoring. Squishy Robotics has commercialized this technology to provide life-saving, cost-saving information in real time with a rapidly deployable mobile sensor robots. Our ask is $1 million with matching funds from NSF with an SBIR2 grant. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Alice. Turning over to the judges for your questions.
Yeah, Alice, very interesting. I mean, this is definitely a pretty unique application. As you look at the sensors and what you're launching, is there a necessity for this to be launched from drones? I mean, if it's impact resistance, it's able to handle all of that collision. Is there a different, more efficient way of launching it? I'm just trying to think through the fire situation that happened here in Santa Cruz Mountains, right? And what's the way to get certain situations? I can see drones, but there are some other places where finding a drone, outfitting it and keeping it ready as opposed to just throwing the sensor over in some other way, launching it into that.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, it's very throwable. We've been working with the military of throwing it down into subterranean applications as well. So we can drop from, we're so lightweight, we only weigh 1 kilogram. We can be dropped from any number of vehicles or any other platforms. So, I mean, it's a good question, but it'll vary. What we're working with is inspection as a service. There's a growing emerging market of drone companies or helicopter companies that are providing this kind of service for inspection and monitoring as well. So it's an emerging, growing complementary to their market. That market has been doubled every year in the last 5 years in the first responder market.
Got it. And then one quick follow-up there is when you're dropping it into pretty hazardous situations, is there an expectation that you won't be able to retrieve it? Are these disposable enough in terms of cost and other things that you can sacrifice?
Well, compared to life saves, they definitely are disposable, but they can always be picked up later if needed as well. I think we've done experiments with earthquake situations, scenarios, underground situations. We've done experiments with chemical hazards as well. And part of that is cleaning it after a chemical hazard. But again, if you save lives, the cost is minimal.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alice. I have a question regarding, first, I like the fact you have spent so much time having interviews, 250 plus interviews with customers. From these interviews, what feature do you provide that no one else provide? And what feature you don't have yet today that is number one that you wish to do?
Well, I did show a roadmap, so it's a little bit of where we hope to go. But the number one feature is that we built, when we talk to our customers, we built that into the technology. But there are definitely issues on the horizon that once you identify a problem, how do you solve the problem? So right now, first responders come in, but in inspection, for instance, we've been working with PG&E and looking at fire mitigation. You want to be able to identify a fire early. And so the campfire was a fire in which PG&E was aware that there was a problem with one of their transmission lines. They sent an aerial vehicle out and didn't detect anything because it maybe hadn't started or was dark in night and they didn't see the fire starting. If they had dropped Squishy Robotics, we could have observed earlier. But working with utility companies, we're finding out that once you identify what might be an incipient failure, how do you repair it? And so that would be on our wish list of being able to identify incipient failures so that the utilities could prioritize where they send people out and possibly even make it possible to provide remote repairs.
And maybe a naive question, but is there any concerns this robot, even though it's 1 kilo, could be dangerous to someone where it falls on the person?
Yeah, good question. Well, we tested that, not on real people, but we have test dummies that look like real people, and they don't seem to cause any damage. The reason is they reach terminal velocity very quickly. And so the actual velocity that they are at for impact is very low. And a lot of that has to do with the lightweight.
Thank you.
Nope. Thank you, Alice. Very interesting saving technology. Thanks for presenting. Now on to the final presenter of this growth stage track. I'd like to welcome Elizabeth Piers from SymSoil.
Thank you. Great presentations from everybody. I am a Haas MBA. I also am a CFA, and my first career was running included running a $160 million mutual fund that earned 4 stars from Morningstar. And we are currently looking to raise $2 million through a safe note. And frankly, I think this is the most exciting investment opportunity I've seen in over 20 years. If you don't mind, I need to spend a minute and a half talking about the science behind our products before I talk about the company that I was a founder of. Okay, so imagine a child who throughout their entire life only eats sugar. That child would not be healthy, and they would be alive, but they certainly wouldn't be thriving. We do the same thing to plants when we feed them NPK fertilizers. You all remember photosynthesis from when you were studying science in high school. Well, you know that the plants pull carbon dioxide out of the air and convert it into sugars. Half of that or more of the sugars and complex carbohydrates are then extruded through the roots and set off an ecosystem of microbes that is the way nature intended plants to get their nutrients, the key elements that they need. A handful of healthy soil has more than 20,000 species. So this was the way it works is that the bacteria and the fungi consume the sugars, and then they, in the course of their life, bond to the nitrogen and the phosphorus and so on. And then they get eaten by the higher trophic levels, which release those key elements in an ionic form. This was understood to be a chemical process 150 years ago, and that's how we've continued to think about it. But in the 1980s, it began to be described by the academics as a biological process. Now, the biology is quite complex because it's not a food chain. It's actually a web that interfaces between many different parts of the chain. For example, fungi that I told you at the very beginning of it, in this case, are eating an insect that's one of the highest. There are 7 types of life, hundreds of species within each type of life. And the reason that SymSoil exists is because up until now, it's all been bench level science. This has never really hit the mainstream because it hasn't been scalable. What SymSoil has done is to find a way to mass produce this product so that it's cost effective, easy for the farmers to use. They can use their existing equipment and their existing processes. The reason you should care is because this is the key to soil degradation and the remediation of soil. It's also the best way to mitigate climate change. We have 3 products in the market. The first product is RC, Robust Compost. This hits the biological endpoints that were set out by Dr. Elaine Ingham, who wrote the original papers on the soil food web back in the 80s. It's very cost effective relative to fertilizer for farmers. The second product we have is a biochar product that's ready to be used immediately. It's very similar to the product that Dr. David Johnson at the Chico School of Regenerative Agriculture has been talking about, and his product has been documented to sequester 46 tons of carbon over a 4.5-year period. Unfortunately, his work, just like Dr. Ingham's, is still small-scale bench-level science and not scalable. The third product we have is a 50-50 mix, which leverages some other research done by other academics in the viticulture industry. I've got a great science team. They have 35 years of experience between them. We're looking to raise $2 million to expand the team, to get some regulatory approvals, some field trials, and to otherwise expand the team. Our world-renowned science advisors. The 3 key markets they're going after early on are cannabis, the vineyards that are growing wine grapes, and the California nut growers, because those products also reduce water usage by 30%. We're part of the ag biologics industry. That's a $3 billion industry with a 40% CAGR. We
are more like an index fund than the bug in the jug products. And I know most of the judges are from the tech industry, so let me just say, World Ag Expo in 2019 felt a lot like Comdex in 1995. The buzz around ag biologics is quite big. It's the future of farming, but we're the only company that has a scalable approach that includes the complete ecosystem. Everything we touch, we try to have a 65% gross margin so that we can get to profitability using economies of scale. We farm the microbes in a hub, and local farmers fund the hub. And then the safe note is in the parent company, which is a California Benefit Corp. We are the general partner in the hubs that are funded by the limited partners. We hold the brands, we hold the IP, we have a pending patent, and we do the administration and other issues. So it's basically a safe note with a 20% discount to the Series A, which we hope to do soon, and a $15 million cap. Thank you. I'd love to take your questions.
Thank you, Elizabeth. On to you, judges.
So Elizabeth, you're making a very bold claim. This is the very best way to protect the environment. Can you describe a bit more why this is the best way above everything else?
Soil-based carbon sequestration is without a doubt the most cost-effective way to sequester carbon. In addition to that, it gives you food that's got more nutrient density, better flavor, and healthier soil. For example, just one small example, you're all familiar with the issues related to Roundup. Well, there are 18 microbes that are known to break that compound down into harmless byproducts. Our product, in the very first batch, had 6 of those, 5 bacteria and 1 fungi.
I see. And just so I understand, what's the cost compared to the alternative that is being used today? For
farmers who are using our RC product, they typically convert it into a liquid. So the 1 cubic yard, which is roughly half a ton, converts into 6,500 gallons, and most of them are using 50 gallons or so per year per acre. So $5, $20 after you add it to the field. That compares to the average farmer in California is spending about $500 an acre. The average row farmer in the Midwest is spending $183 an acre. There is a small amount of equipment, about $5,000 worth, that most of the farmers have to buy. But beyond that, they can use the equipment they're already using.
Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth, can you talk about the customers or the farms that are using it today? How much area, and sort of give some metrics to see how much progress you've had?
Yeah, it's a little hard because our early customers were the cannabis growers, and they're a challenging group to deal with. I can tell you that one of our early adopters, well, I can tell you about quality, I can tell you about water. We have about $85,000 in revenue in the last 12 months, and a lot of that was challenged by things that happened with COVID-19.
Got it.
We have no field trials. We're at this point, we're relying on 40 years of research and hundreds of papers that have been written on the topic. We are really just about making the product that the market has not been able to find. Let me give you one more example. There's a wine grape nursery. They grow the vines that the vineyards plant, called Chima. They're a French company that has a California subsidiary. I talked to the gentleman for less than 1 hour. And he said, I took the classes with Dr. Ingham in 2006. I have been playing with this idea for 15 years, but I've never been able to bring it into my professional life. In less than an hour, we had a strategic partnership that he thinks will result in the sale of hundreds of thousands of vines within 2 years. I met him on a Tuesday. On Thursday, he showed up with a truck to get samples so that he could start running trials.
Very nice.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
And that wraps up all 5 presentations for the growth stage track. Thank you, founders. We really enjoy your presentations. This was a very difficult decision. The judges definitely took their time and talking through the decision. So thank you again. I think that reflects on the quality of the presentations, the companies. It's my pleasure to announce the winner of the growth stage track of the 2021 UC-XTC Startup Innovation Challenge. Congratulations to Sophie's BioNutrients. As the winner, Sophie's BioNutrients will receive a $50,000 cash prize and also automatically be advanced to the final round of XTC, which will hold its global finals later this summer. Stay tuned for more information. Karen Sui, would you like to say a few words?
Oh, wow, Victoria, I'm very honored and humbled by this award. And I want to thank you, UC head office, yourself, and your colleagues, obviously the judges, for their validations of what we do. Going forward, I think we're going to achieve our mission to try to solve the world food security problems. Thank you.
That's great. Awesome. Judges, that was quite the discussion. You want to share your thoughts?
I was just going to say we loved all the projects, so I don't think anyone should leave thinking that they didn't impress us. I think all the project was very impressive.
Yeah, I think this is probably, as I've shared, this is probably the most diverse set of startups that I've seen in very different spaces, all in important problems. So I think what I liked is not only the societal impact, but the thoughtful way in which they all presented. And it made it really tough for us. And when it's a tough job for judges, that means you've all done some really good work.
Yeah, the quality was very good for all of them on the innovation and the presentations. In fact, the numbers were very close, and we had to then have a longer discussion to decide.
Yes,
so
again,
nobody failed, so they're all very good, and hopefully wish a bright future.
Definitely. Again, very impressive group, everyone. And I don't want to speak for the other judges, but I learned a lot through these presentations as well. So thanks again to everyone for all their hard work. Really, it was very impressive and very difficult to choose a winner.
Thank you. And I also want to just congratulate and recognize all 5 finalists. Like the judge said, for the important work that you're doing to improve the world. And essentially everybody's a winner in that way. I would also like to thank our VC judges and over 50 UC colleagues for helping to select and coach the companies. And thank you to our live judging panel, Alessandro Zago, Nicolas Sauvage, Scott Levine, and Srini Anand for your thoughtful questions. And a hearty appreciation to the generous support of our sponsors and partners. And to all of you in the audience, thank you so much for joining. Please reach out to connect with us. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and stay well.